Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down the big ideas. And today, we're tackling a massive question, maybe one of the biggest. How do powerful political movements actually get made?
Okay, so let's just jump right in. The political philosopher Ernesto Laclau basically saw this as one of the great puzzles of politics. And when you think about it, it really does seem impossible, doesn't it? How on earth do you get all these completely different people who want completely different things all onto the same page?
I mean, just think about it. You've got unions fighting for fair wages over here. You've got environmentalists fighting for climate protection over there. Students are demanding reforms. Activists are fighting for civil rights. You know, a lot of the time their goals aren't just different, they can actually be in conflict. So how do they ever form a single united front?
To really get our heads around this, we have to start with a fundamental problem. A kind of trap, really, that any group faces when it tries to make its voice heard. Laclau argues that if a group focuses only on its own unique identity, it runs headfirst into a paradox.
So here's the trap. According to Laclau, you're caught between two really bad options. On one hand, there's isolation. You can proudly declare, this is who we are, we're different, but you risk getting pushed to the margins, becoming a kind of ghetto, where your unique culture is just treated as folklore by the powers that be. On the other hand, you can try assimilation. You work within the system, you play the game, but the danger there is that the system just swallows you whole. It co-opts your movement, waters down your message, and you lose the very thing you were fighting for.
And this quote from Laclau just hits the nail on the head. This idea that you can win a political fight while keeping your group's identity 100% pure and unchanged? He says it's a fantasy. It's just not how it works. To actually succeed, your identity has to be flexible. It has to change. It has to hybridize.
All right, so if shared goals aren't quite enough, and if trying to maintain a pure identity is a trap, then how is real, powerful unity actually built? Well, the answer is a little counterintuitive. Turns out it often has less to do with what people want and everything to do with what they don't want.
This right here is Laclau's big idea. He calls it the logic of equivalence. And it's this idea that unity usually doesn't spring from everyone agreeing on a positive vision. No, it's forged in the fire of being against the same thing. A shared enemy has this incredible power to make totally different struggles feel, well, equivalent.
So let's break down how this actually works. Step 1, you just have a bunch of separate groups, all doing their own thing, wanting their own thing. Then, step 2, some external power, like an oppressive regime, comes along and just says no to all of them. It doesn't distinguish between them, it just treats them all as one big threat. And by doing that, it accidentally forges a link between them. That's step 3, the chain of equivalence. Suddenly, their different fights are connected, and an attack on the students starts to feel like an attack on the unions, and so on.
Now, this isn't just theory. We can see a perfect example of this in 1960s Argentina. You had all these groups with totally separate demands. Some wanted better housing, others wanted higher wages, others wanted union rights. The authoritarian government just rejected every single one of them flat out. And that shared rejection, that big no, is what created that chain of equivalence, linking all those diverse struggles into one massive popular movement against the regime.
Now, this whole process of uniting against a common enemy, it builds towards what is maybe the most powerful tool in any movement's arsenal, creating a symbol so broad, so open, that everybody can see themselves in it.
Laclau has a name for this. He calls it an empty signifier. It sounds a bit academic, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's a banner that everyone can march under precisely because it doesn't belong to any one group. Its meaning is left open on purpose. It's hollowed out, so that all these different people can fill it with their own hopes and their own demands.
Just think about some of the most powerful political words we have: freedom, change, the people. What do they actually mean specifically? Well, that's the whole point. Their power comes directly from their emptiness. Change can mean better wages to a worker, it can mean green policies to an environmentalist, it can mean education reform to a student. This empty signifier comes to represent what Laclau calls the absent fullness of the community, that better world everyone wants, even if they all imagine it a little differently.
And one of the most incredible historical examples of a person becoming an empty signifier is Juan Perón, the former president of Argentina. When he was in exile, he wasn't a day-to-day politician making specific choices. He was far away. He became an idea, a pure symbol of opposition. For 18 years. For 18 years, the name Perón was the ultimate empty signifier. From thousands of miles away, his name was this symbol that united this huge, sprawling, and frankly contradictory movement back in Argentina. You had everyone from left-wing guerrillas to conservative union bosses all chanting his name,
because they all saw their own hopes reflected in the idea of his return.
But this leads us to the most critical and maybe the most dangerous question of all. What happens when the movement actually wins? What happens when that empty symbol comes back from exile and has to start filling that emptiness with concrete, real-world policies?
This is where you see just how fragile this kind of unity really is. As long as Perón was in exile, his name was the glue. But when he actually returned in 1973 and became president again, he was no longer an empty symbol. He had to make real choices, divisive choices. And the very moment that empty symbol became full, the entire coalition that was built around him just shattered. The infighting was immediate and intense, and it ultimately paved the way for the brutal military dictatorship that took over in 1976.
So what's the big takeaway here? Creating political unity is this incredibly dynamic but also fragile process. It's almost always built against a common enemy, not for a common goal. It's held together by these really powerful but really vague symbols. And these coalitions are always at risk of falling apart, especially the moment they actually succeed. Which means for any group to be part of a winning movement, it can't cling to some pure idea of itself. It has to be willing to evolve, to hybridize its own identity.
And all of this leaves us with one final thought. A question for you, really. When you look at the political landscape today, can you spot them? Can you see the empty signifiers? What are the powerful, vague words or slogans or even people that different groups are rallying behind, all trying to fill them with their own meaning? Because the answer to that question tells you an awful lot about how politics really works right now.